When my friends and I were just 14, we were the kind of kids who thrived on mischief. One of our favorite Saturday night games was what we called the Midnight Bell Dash. This was about 12 years ago, back when we all lived on the same street in a sleepy suburban town called Cedar Grove. Back then, there were fewer houses and more wild patches of woods creeping close to the sidewalks. For this story, I'll rename my friends. There was Alex, Ryan, and Leo. Usually, Alex and Ryan were the brave ones who would ring the doorbells, while Leo and I found the best hiding spots nearby. That night, we hit about 6 houses. Most of the men who answered the doors reacted the same way. They'd step outside, shout something gruff, then slam the door shut. At one house, a man even threatened to call the police the second time we rang. We bolted down the street and crossed over to the next block. This block was different. The houses looked neglected, with overgrown lawns and cracked windows. Right across from a thick patch of woods stood a small, rundown house. The driveway had a rusted old car covered with a tarp, and the whole place gave off an eerie vibe. Alex was the first to step up and ring the bell. He barely had time to cross the street before the door swung open. The man who answered was huge, nearly 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and with a scowl that could freeze blood. Unlike the others, he was furious. He stormed around his yard yelling threats, checking every bush and corner. We couldn't help but laugh nervously. After a few minutes, he went back inside. Alex peeked through the windows, then, against my better judgment, rang the bell again. The door opened almost instantly this time, and the man stepped out holding a rifle. Our eyes locked, and we all froze, hearts pounding. We whispered to each other, "We're done for." He methodically searched the yard again behind the car, near the trees, then stopped dead in the middle of his lawn, staring right at us hidden in the woods. We ducked lower, hoping he hadn't spotted us. After what felt like an eternity, he retreated inside but soon appeared at the front window, standing perfectly still, watching us like a predator sizing up its prey. Then, Alex crept back toward the door, daring to ring the bell once more. We held our breath, frozen in place. The man didn't move immediately, but after a tense minute, he turned away from the window. We didn't see Alex again, and fear kept us silent. Suddenly, we heard Alex's voice from across the street, shouting, "Run!" Confused, we turned just in time to see the man charging toward us with his rifle raised. We bolted like our lives depended on it because they did, sprinting toward Alex waiting on the other side of the street. We ran for blocks, hearts racing, until we were sure we'd lost him. Alex later told us he'd seen the man sneaking through the woods behind us, gun in hand, and yelled to warn us. We never reported the incident. We only told a few close friends, and thankfully, that creepy house was far enough away that we never had to pass it again. But that night, the thrill of the game turned into a nightmare we'd never forget. I moved into a small apartment that quickly became a nightmare, one I couldn't escape for nearly 3 weeks. As a university student, my parents had arranged a modest place for me in a quiet neighborhood of Ashwood. At first, I was content the apartment was nothing extravagant, but it was mine. That peace shattered fast. It was a gloomy Sunday afternoon, the kind where rain pounds relentlessly against the windows. I was lounging on the couch, flipping through channels, when I heard a faint scraping noise on the hardwood floor. I scanned the room, half expecting a stray animal to have found its way inside. Finding nothing, I shrugged it off and resumed watching TV. But then, as the rain intensified, the strange sounds grew bolder. From the kitchen came the unmistakable sound of something falling. Grabbing the nearest thing-a-cushiony, cautiously approached the dark doorway. There, scattered across the floor, was a toppled box of cereal, its tiny loops spilled everywhere. How it had fallen was a mystery. The box had been unopened. As I bent down to clean, a creak echoed from the floor near the dining table, like the groan of an old floorboard under weight. I looked up sharply. No one was there. My heart raced. Was I imagining things? I convinced myself it was just nerves and finished tidying up. Later, thunder rumbled ominously outside, a strange comfort amidst the growing unease. I dozed off, only to be jolted awake by a loud thud from below. The TV was still on, but it wasn't the noise that woke me, it was the pounding in my chest. I switched off the set and climbed the stairs to my bedroom, trying to shake off the dread. The next 2 days passed uneventfully, but then the darkness returned with the weather. On a particularly bleak morning, I woke feeling worse than I ever had, with a hangover, nauseous and weak. The gray sky outside matched the heaviness inside me. I kept the TV on for background noise, a trash bin close by just in case. Then came the sounds from above the attic. The door to it was right in my bedroom ceiling, and the space stretched over most of the room. At first, it was a single creak, then multiple. Despite the sickness twisting my stomach, I forced myself to get up, grabbed an old baseball bat, and climbed the narrow stairs. I flipped on the light, revealing dusty boxes left behind by the previous tenant. But no sign of anything alive. Still, the noises persisted. I fled back down, heart pounding. That night, the noises returned, louder and more chilling. I woke to a heavy thud, then silence. Gathering every ounce of courage, I pulled down the attic door again, bat in hand. I shouted into the darkness, trying to scare off whatever was there. Then, a soft giggle echoed back. A child's giggle. The weight in my chest dropped away, replaced by pure terror. I didn't hesitate. I bolted out of the apartment, rain soaking through my clothes as I called my father, voice trembling, begging him to come get me. The next day, with my parents' support, I packed up and left that cursed place behind. Even now, I'm certain what I experienced wasn't just my imagination. Something unexplainable haunted that apartment, and I never want to go back. When I was 23, I took a temporary job as a housekeeper for an elderly woman named Mrs. Hawthorne. What started as a simple gig turned into the most unsettling experience of my life, one I still can't shake off. Mrs. Hawthorne lived alone in a sprawling, centuries-old mansion perched on the edge of a dense forest in a small town called Ashwood. The estate sprawled over nearly 3 acres, hemmed in by towering trees on 3 sides and a lonely, winding road on the 4th. The house itself was a relic, mostly weathered oak and stone, with dark, shadowy rooms that seemed to swallow the light. Mrs. Hawthorne kept most of the blinds tightly shut, and whenever I dared to open them, I'd find them closed again by the next time I entered. She was a frail woman in her late 70s, with sharp eyes that never quite met mine. The work she assigned me was mostly physical dusting, sweeping, laundry, and sorting her mail. One chilly October weekend, she asked me to stay overnight. The house had 5 bedrooms, but she lived alone, so it wasn't unusual for me to have my own room. I arrived on a Friday afternoon, barely exchanging words with Mrs. Hawthorne. I dropped my bag on the bed of the guest room, which smelled faintly of mothballs and old wood. As I turned to leave, I caught her standing silently in the doorway. No greeting. Just a cold command, clean this room first. Then she disappeared upstairs. I didn't see her again that day, but I heard her pacing above slow, deliberate footsteps that echoed through the floorboards. There was no television or radio in the house, so I had no idea what she was doing up there. What unsettled me most was her obsession with the basement. She made it clear it was off limits, her voice sharp and unyielding whenever I even glanced toward the door. "Never go down there," she warned. Night fell quickly. I went to bed early, the mattress lumpy and unforgiving. Hours later, I was jolted awake by the creak of footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, inching along the floorboards. I held my breath as the footsteps paused right outside. Then, the doorknob began to turn. I froze, pulling the covers over my head, pretending to sleep. After a tense moment, the footsteps retreated, fading down the stairs. But then I heard the basement door creak open. Curiosity and fear warred inside me. After half an hour, I couldn't take it anymore. Quiet as a mouse, I slipped out of bed and tiptoed toward the basement door. I flipped the switch and descended the narrow stairs, heart pounding in my ears. At the bottom, 2 old wooden chairs sat side by side, and in them, 2 decaying bodies, dressed in tattered clothes and wigs. One wore a faded beret. The sight of a beetle crawling across one corpse made my stomach twist. I stepped closer, needing to be sure. These were real. Dead. For maybe a year or more. Suddenly, heavy footsteps thudded above. I barely had time to hide behind a dusty couch before Mrs. Hawthorne's slow, deliberate steps descended the stairs. I held my breath as she whispered my name, a chilling hiss in the dark. Peeking out, I saw her clutching a large kitchen knife, eyes wild and unblinking. I bolted up the stairs, heart hammering, grabbing my bag from the guest room. She screamed after me, but I was faster. Bursting out the front door, I jumped into my car and sped away, glancing back to see her standing silently on the porch, watching me go. I never gave her my real contact details. To this day, I don't know who the smaller corpse was, but I suspect the larger one was her late husband, someone she'd mentioned in passing. That night, I learned some secrets are better left buried.